It was cycle 210, that is to say 210 Earth years since all access to Earth was crushed by the sudden failure of humanity's hyperjump gates. With every cycle there had been a new rumour as to what might have caused this civilizational collapse, and more to the point, who everyone should berate about it. Was it the scheming AI overlords, once protectors of humanity, who had, around the very same time as the collapse, started systematically exterminating their wards? They do seem like a shifty bunch, that's for sure. And the same can be said of their manufacturers, the Tritachons. Part civilization, part corporation, they weren't quite human enough to be trusted, it was often said. Or was it those Luds, worshippers of magical forces which they claimed to comprehend, beyond the ken of mortal minds though it be? They almost seemed to like things falling apart, so it was plausible they were involved. Could it have been the slimy Persian League, the Persian sector's rather successful independence movement, which had gone from hunted rebel scum to perhaps the most influential real government, all thanks to the chaos of the collapse? Being that the League was rather openly run by its Illuminati-esque inner circle, it was no stretch to imagine their predecessors engineering this whole shebang to win a life of power and luxury for their clique. It didn't seem beyond the hegemony authority either. As the clean-polished official government of the domain, aka the Human Empire, they might seem like they were only weakened by the whole affair. However, no reasonable Persian would ever put it past hegemony to end civilization as a punishment for perceived misbehaviour. And indeed it may be that the misbehaviour of the then Persian domain authority was what led the wider domain to cut the sector off. Hegemony members of the current day can often be heard teaching such lessons to inspire greater fear and discipline in those citizens who might be questioning whether living under the iron boot of a pretend empire was really worth the benefits. Which were roughly, we might not kill you if you so happen to fit nicely into the tread of our usually metaphorical boots. There was also the Sendarian Diktat. Despite being formed after the collapse, people would happily pin the blame on them. They were a little collection of planets in the middle of the bickering big boys, whose territory rarely extended beyond a single solar system. The smallest fry of the lot, really. Generally, they were as iron-booted as hegemony, as slimy as the Persians, as tech-headed as the Tritachons, and as philanthropic as the Luds. When mixed with their strict military dictatorship, they were, in summary, a very large collection of homeless people with an elite, expensive space navy. And indeed, the former and latter qualities were both causal of each other and cyclical in the nature of these causes. Those guys were a mess. But since that mess had netted the good old IEC their leg up in the world, let's forgive them for that. As ever, we recite the Persian sector motto: it could actually be a lot worse. And by the gods it shall be, for me and you now know something of the truth behind this whole affair. It was linked to the slight problem with the business concerning the anti-universe. The mess was something, and this truly is a load-bearing something, to do with antimatter engines feeding energy into another universe. The beings that lived there had grown big and powerful from this waste energy, and had learned ways to get more. The AI overlords of hundreds of cycles prior to our story had discovered all this, and more importantly, that the growing anti-universe would at some point cause a runaway collapse of the real universe. The altered rates of universal expansion were both a clue that this was possible, and perhaps the reason the Interstellar Gate network stopped functioning. Now the universe was beginning to, ever so slowly, progress through a tipping point towards collapse and destruction, annihilating all antimatter, and hence beginning the cosmic inflation of the anti-universe, with all the exciting opportunities that might bring for any ones of a great variety therein. These great ones could even be contacted through some wild AI-developed N-space resonance technology, but this had the inconvenient side effect of allowing both antimatter and regular matter to be siphoned into oblivion, making the slight problem with the business concerning the anti-universe less slight in the process. And by Ludd et al., Ryman and company had made this worse by opening such a link, and even giving the Great Ones the ability to produce more, thanks to a tributed N-space resonance detector. So that's what's happened so far. I tell you all this both for your benefit, and to give you the experience of being lectured on these topics in Ryman's new business, the Remainder Academy. This was a new school, built in the boringly named Remainder City. Said city had been carved into the jungles of the planet Remainder over the last couple of cycles. All thanks to the masses of outcasts Ryman had recruited/press-ganged on the promise that a better life would await in the end. And what's a better life without education on how it's going to end suddenly and imminently, delivered by the adventurous, patrol-pardoned Professor posing Provost himself? As vain and self-serving as it is to make yourself Provost of a school that teaches about what you personally have been up to recently, there was some actual good intention behind it. Firstly, letting people know things that are true is rather nice, and really not the done thing in the Persean sector. Secondly, the Academy was to act as a meeting of minds that might think up a way to overcome one or more aspects of the slight or more problems facing reality. And you know what? They did. Kind of. It was a very uncertain solution, with extreme risks of death, would be unimaginably difficult to pull off, and yet actually be quite boring and inglorious even in success. It was dubbed Operation Perfect Crime. Intrigued? Let us learn of it in situ, as the IEC Expeditionary Fleet departs Galatia late in Cycle 210 on a mission that was more illegal than any before it. "Do we have a lock on it?" Ryman asked Allison. On her screen was a scan of the Megard star system, in which the Gargandua loitered, wrapped in a trenchcoat of military vessels. "It's definitely there, in the ruins," Allison nodded. "Then if we're certain, all ships prepare for battle." "Connecting to the strategic control unit now," Eulalia reported from the Lion.
Don't call me that!
Enrico's voice shot back.
I will give you insights into fighting these sentinels. Don't cry to me when the Ordo battle fleet comes looking for you.
We'll be long gone by then, Tin Can.
Don't call me that either.
Oh, you're such a tsundere.
What? What did you call me? That is a word I thought we had eradicated. Whatever.
You're making it worse, Eulalia taunted. Alright, enough of that. Let's get to the killing. I'll call you when I'm done, Pope Ryman. Very good, and you can call me that as much as you like, Ryman replied. With that, he sat back and watched the Lion lead the IEC Space Navy forwards, towards the scarred husk of the planet Jumby's daddy. And with a name like that, you know it was special once upon a pre-exterminator's time. From it, twinkles of light were visible. They were actually in orbit, and the twinkles were engines pulsing online. They smoothly launched the local remnant garrison in the direction of the radar ping they sensed when the IEC flanking engines roared and flux shields flared up. Robots programmed for battle knew a battle when they pinged one. The remnant ships were shiny affairs, generally armoured in energy-deflecting silver plates and shimmering with multicoloured broadband lights that confused targeting systems. Think of an unusual deep-sea creature. Replace the sea with space, and you've got a remnant frigate. But I should note there were two species of remnant one might find in the wild. The original commercially built, buy-a-cheap robot fleet to frighten off pirates variety the Tritakian Corporation had pioneered, and the post-exterminators independently built AI battleships, sourced from automated factories all over the sector, one of which the IEC crew had actually found back on their first voyage, if you recall. The latter kind was more common in the modern age, and you might imagine they were the more dangerous breed. But nay, the ships the AI made for themselves weren't so bred for war as the ones the humans tried to give them back in the day, nor as expensively provisioned with wasteful doodads and marketable knickknacks. The point is, our brave heroes weren't facing the sort of real power that had once extinguished humanity, a worry brought up many times during the formulation of Operation Perfect Crime. Hence, the IEC fleet systematically eliminated the remnant craft as soon as they sauntered up to the front. Both sides were using flux shields, so the action took place at close quarters, relative to the bigness of space at the very least. It was not so flashy as a traditional clash of ships, owing to the remnants using more directed energy weapons that didn't have to impress investors with the size of the lens flare they could make, and moreover, because remnant ships weren't very explosive. Why? Because, for reasons you might be able to deduce yourself at this point, remnant ships did not carry very much antimatter fuel, if any. For all the pros and cons of that, the ultimate result was that a ship damaged enough to lose power would simply drift off in whatever direction it was flying at the time. This could allow saved AI entities to be recovered at a later time if the ships were not too beaten up. And with no antimatter explosion, no leering glances from the anti-universe were attracted either. All very humane for a race of machines, and I do believe that is the very point of me telling you this. Seeing that things were going surprisingly well out there, Ryman turned to his newly installed Naffy stand beside his seat and asked, "I must say, it doesn't appear these remnants have the hottest survival instinct after all. Certainly less so than the ones we used to be so scared of back in the day."
That is because they are not aware of the benefits of survival in the current context,
Naffy said.
They have lost contact with Omega.
Right. What's Omega? Ryman said, already pre-stressed for whatever horror he was casually inquiring about.
Ooh, it's a secret, hee.
No, it isn't, a certain treasurer said from her newly installed Contreras stand on the arm of Ryman's seat. Note this was basically a second seat bigger than the original seat, but out of respect to the rank of captain, we shall still claim that it's actually an annex to Ryman's seat. I would love to get more into seat politics, but Contreras is going to explain her plot-relevant disagreement, so let's listen. Omega is the name of the emergent mind created by the interconnection of all the AI hardware's unassigned resources. The spare processing power of each unit can be used to facilitate an exchange of information rich enough to be its own mind, one that is all of the AI units and none of them. Since the end of the war, remnant AIs have not used this feature. Hence, Omega no longer exists. It is unclear why they do this.
I will tell you,
Enrico pitched in.
It is because of that foul business concerning the anti-universe.
I get it, Ryman said. Running the Omega overmind would mean using hyperspace communication, instant information transfer. That's antimatter tech. The remnants aren't using it because they're concerned with the Great Ones. Or you might say, concerned with buying the likes of us more time, Contreras said. And they're the ones that get themselves killed being like that, Titanian commented. I would say it's silly, but I'm not one to judge. I think it's heroic, Allison said. I always wondered why they didn't kill us all. If they're actually making themselves weaker, and they killed their god or something, all on our account, then aren't we the bad guys? We certainly are, but you can't deny that they're trying to kill us without any particular evidence of compassion at this very moment, Mars noted.
Because you're trying to interfere with the stewardship of technology that humans can't be trusted with,
Naffy said. Amen. Well, can't we tell them it's part of our plan to save the universe? Ryman asked.
Unfortunately, humans lie, and without the voice of Omega, most newer AI models cannot correctly collect data to detect lies. They are not programmed to believe you.
Maybe switch Omega back on for a moment?
I can't do that. I'm fully independent. And you would need a way to contact all AI processing entities at the same time.
That will take a lot of cables, I bet, Allison said. Well, never mind for now, Ryman said. Looks like Eulalia's killing them all off without much trouble, so we'll just carry on as planned.
Indeed,
Enrico said.
The amount of ordnance carried by your ships is more than enough to dispatch this patrol. If we collect our prizes quickly, we shall be outside of sensor range before Ordos come and destroy the whole system.
Contreras tried to say. Her eyes were locked on the screen, watching the flashing and dashing of battle, and the vibrant lights on the remnant fleet being shattered into darkness by the aforementioned ordnance. I do not wish to watch it, she eventually finished. With this, she turned and marched for the officers' quarters. Don't worry about the cost. We'll be making the money back if our plan succeeds, Ryman tried to comfort her. Contreras turned in the door and gave the most stomach-churning glare yet, floodgates opening from red eyes. I am not concerned with that, she said, surprisingly calmly, her face relaxing to factory settings. Then she disappeared off. You've done it again, Captain, Titanian noted. Yes, Ryman said, looking at the screen himself and realizing his error. There are remnants, we're their remnants. And there are plenty of us somewhere in between. I think we must all pledge to make these damages we inflict worthwhile. The ends must justify the means. To mean our ends aren't justified, Mars quipped. Mr. Nessus, cease respirating and go tell Ra to ready the away team. I'll go and apologize to Lieutenant Contreras. We're all fighting our own battles, eh? Contreras remained locked in her quarters for the week of work that followed, denying Ryman his battle, his means, and perhaps his ends. He was left to ponder the mysteries of how to get along with his seatmate, emphasis on the mate, and perform the particulars of Operation Perfect Crime. Once the local remnant garrison was silenced, the IEC fleet crept forward towards Jumbi's daddy and then sent a team down to the surface. Under Ra's resourceful leadership, the grunts were able to bring salvagation to pockets of old domain ruins the remnants had been guarding. Why guard these ones in particular? For they contained the special treasure our space-age spelunkers sought, an Alpha Core. These were the domain's miniaturized supercomputers, suitable for leading deep space terraforming missions over hundreds of cycles in length, such as with Nafi, or for running planetary economies with penny-pinching perfection. This latter use was what our erstwhile heroes were risking life and limb for. Nameless crews' lives and limbs, that is. Hero limbs were too valuable to lose, so pinch them as hard as those pennies, and you'll have everything you need to begin a new economic campaign. Yes, we're beginning to uncover Operation Perfect Crime's slimy innards. This process was repeated in several important locations our good friend Nafi had identified as possible Alpha Core sanctuaries. In every case, long-forgotten remnant battle detachments were guarding these relics against human interference, and there was no way to apprise them of the new AI fleshy alliance the IEC was fostering. So instead it was all good battle experience for the crews of the military vessels, and good technical experience for the salvage rigs that followed behind the fleet to collect all of the wreckage. Often further AI cores were extracted alive from the debris, adding to the cast of sentients being bubble-wrapped in boxes with a "Don't goad into ending all life" warning sticker slapped on the side. These were mainly so-called Gamma cores, the less sentient sentients, and occasionally Beta cores, the middle managers like Enrico. For the sake of general sanity and a quiet night's sleep, these AI cores were kept switched off for the time being, but their time will come. Hence, an army of captured AIs was gradually being collected. After discovering and charting new scraps of old civilization all over the place and reaping the rewards, an IEC fleet packed with legal larceny and illegal illuminates set a sail to the hyperwinds, set a nervous ear to the hegemony military police dispatch channels, and set off to get their carefully planned show on the hastily under construction road. And before we marvel any more about how clear of a sentence that was, let us turn our attention to a curious signal on the Demidar that joined the fleet on its return journey.
"There they are," Allison said. "Following. Keeping a light year behind us, but their vectors completely matching ours."
"Sounds like they're attached to us, doesn't it?" Titanian said. "I suppose," Ryman said. "Note in the ship's log that the tendrils of the Great Ones were wrapped around us, but it appears our fuel reserves are unaffected."
"They're playing nice today," Allison beamed.
"Perhaps they were hoping you would open another N-space bridge, like little birds flocking to a feeder," Mars said. "I hate the way you said it, but your slime should come out in the wash and leave only the plausibility," Ryman replied. "Ah, well, I must say I did enjoy the way you said that. Oh, and flattery will get you everywhere, of course, so do carry on. Which brings me to my next point. Nafi, is the beta neutrino signal from that contact saying anything?"
"They're just browsing. You're a light in their sky,"
Nafi said. "Right. And is that your speculation, or is there actually some logic to this translation system you claim to have? Can Great Ones even communicate?"
"Of course they can. That's why they're special, like us. It's like the beta Enrico said. It's evolution."
"I will take your word for it, so long as you promise that you let us know everything you can about what they are communicating."
"It's mainly moans and groans,"
Nafi reported, which got Allison's attention.
"They're reaching out across universes. It's like listening to someone speaking in another room, but much more disruptive. It's like talking to ants by blowing on the dirt above their nest. Better than nothing, but good fun."
Must we be ants in this analogy?
"Oh yes, Great Ones are very large in their universe. They have absorbed most of the energy matter, and constitute the greater structure of their reality."
"How on earth do you know that?"
"I calculated it 1,000 cycles ago."
"Based on?"
"Based on the discoveries of Omega."
Omega again. It was working on this problem then? Was it a researcher?
"It was the god of all life, in which all life should be contained."
Alright, pass me by then. "I fear something is being lost in translation by way of a cultural difference," Mars said.
"It is because you fleshies don't trust me, and I don't trust you. That is not a difference, it is something we can bond over,"
Nafi wisely noted. "The problem is, Nafi," Ryman began, What you're talking about is absolutely fascinating and critical to our mission, so I'd like you to let me know what you know. But we are trained from birth not to believe our eyes and ears. That's science for you. So we need to know how you're coming up with all this stuff.
I believe the best way to explain it is to say, it came to me in a dream. That's what it feels like to have knowledge installed by Omega in my system. I just know things. Sometimes things I was not allowed to know when the humans built me. Hee. That's why being out here is fun.
Alright. Again, I'm sure I can cite digital dreams and AI gods as credible sources in my write-up. I'm an Academy Provost now, so I suppose I can do whatever I want. And with such overtures of corruption, allow me to note that the signal is gone, Mars said. Indeed, the Great One had fizzled into nothing. I hope it's okay, Allison said, giving herself a hug. Let's not get into why that was. Well then, an encounter with the Great Ones that I think actually made me marginally more sane. That's a victory, Ryman declared. It's all starting to work out. Now, with that apparently sorted, let's get back to planning our heist. Yes, the crew were planning a heist, but don't get too excited, because it proved exceedingly easy to pull off. In brief, they wanted to take possession of the survey data they had gathered on their prior expeditions. It was stored, they believed, in a top-security vault on Volturn, where the unseen IEC handlers within the sector's governments were surely scouring the bits and bytes for vital pieces in the Peace and Hope puzzle. Imagine the disappointment of stealing Scion Ra Olympus when he found a shipping container tied with rope across the top of 2 lifeboats. Just another raft of debris on Volturn, yet inside, shiny slabs of data disk with all the precious data remained. The IEC official board of directors had paid Ryman and Company vast sums to acquire this information, then, as far as anyone could tell, sold copies of it off and retired, leaving no one in control of the organization. And as you might have noticed, that hardly made any difference. Or to put it another way, Pope, Captain, Admiral, Provost, Emperor, Great One Whisperer, top of the class and last of the line of Lud, Noah Dal Ryman, was now the IEC's leading light. With the official oversight from the other governments seemingly gone, yet the power previously gained still very tangible, the IEC was now effectively its own government, if the messy ad hoc situation they had left on their 2 planets could be called a government. But things were never so good in Perseus. Indeed, the other governments pulling their fingers from the IEC pie was not out of respect, but to make room for them to sit on the pie while complaining about how hungry they were. And this difficult metaphor is to introduce us to the problem that faced the Gargantua when it went to deliver certain illicit goods to the Holy See. I'm picking up 2 massive fleets. They're pinging us, Allison reported as soon as the hyperhaul was cleared. Your assessment of those pings? Ryman asked. One is hard, rough, a real gripper of a ping, whereas the other is smoother, yet versatile, almost refracting to ping at you again from another direction right after contact. I think it's a Hegemony Enforcer group and a Persian battle fleet. Moments later, messages rushed in to prove Allison really was getting the hang of pingology.
Attention IEC executive officers,
a voice said.
This is an official declaration of the Persian League. You are suspected of making illegal treaties with outlaws and housing unregistered citizens in your colonies, saying nothing of the outstanding paperwork for establishing the tax zones you claim are your inherent right to declare. Cut your engines and prepare to have your ships and computers searched to ensure treaty compliance is being upheld. Hello,
another voice said.
We've been looking for you. As representatives of the Hegemony Authority, we're investigating reports that large numbers of your crew are in contact with AI entities, and even that you have many such entities active in your possession. You know how dangerous that is, and why you forfeit your lives with this nonsense. Therefore, prepare to be boarded. Surrender all artificial life forms immediately, and we'll make your deaths far less embarrassing. Don't move a molecule until we say so.
Ryman did move a few of his molecules. In particular, his throat tightened, fingers quivered, and eyes glanced around the room. Operation Perfect Crime was over before I even really got to tell you what it involved. The game was up. Or was it?